Me and Darsey were close. We fought like brothers always do, but that was never enough to hurt us. We played video games tons as kids and adults. After I finished school, I stayed in Klamath for a bit, and I had no real goals. Around my 20th birthday, I spoke with a Army recruiter, and I left for basic on Darsey's birthday. After a few years, I had my first suicidal thoughts. It was scary, but I knew I could not be alone. I spoke with the first of many therapists. He immediately placed me on Lexapro. I stayed on Lexapro for years, till after Darsey passed. It was my most consistent medication. I decided one day to try and go without. For me, it was amazing. Meds all have side effects, and I would urge everybody to give them a try. But keep in mind, every action has a consequence. Meds don't work for me personally. Both me and Darsey found a great escape in video games. We played a ton and often played together. We were so good, I once got to third in the world. Shortly after Battlefield Hardline died out, I moved back to Klamath where Darsey still lived. From July of 2016 on, we spent tons of time together, both on Xbox and in person. We both grew fond of a pond near Aspen Lake off of Highway 140. We spent lots of time out there shooting and just hanging out. On October 8th, I woke up and went to work just like I did every Sunday morning. When I walked out my front door, Darsey's truck wasn't parked in the spot where it almost always was. I had an odd feeling, but I brushed it off with the thought of, he's probably at work. I was at work for a bit when I heard the police scanner chirp on. I began to ignore it as I always did, but my ears refocused when I heard the officer ask for next of kin for Darsey Stringer. I was scared and lost, so I began to walk out of my work building for some air. Before I got out the door, my wife called me and she said, "What the fuck is going on?" I, in a very confused voice, asked, "What do you mean?" She asked me why the cops were at our house. I responded by asking her what the cops had said. She told me the 3 questions, and the last one's wording scared me. The officer asked, "Is Jeanette Stringer home?" My wife, confused, said no, she moved to Eugene. The officer asked, "Is Christian Stringer home?" My wife said no, he is at work. So the officer then asked, "Is this the home of Darsey Stringer?" My wife said, "Yes, but I'm pretty sure he is at work also." So the officer asked where I worked. My wife informed him, and he let her know he was going to come speak to me. I told my wife I loved her, and I walked out the front door of my work and began looking left and right, searching for the sheriff's officer. While struggling to breathe due to the anxiety, I watched the SUV pull into my work. I walked right up to the door. The officer opened the door and said, "You're Christian Stringer?" I nodded. He placed one foot on the ground and said 8 words nobody ever wants to hear. He said, "There is no easy way to say this. And as anybody who has ever been told that phrase, you will never hear all of it." By the time the officer finished saying easy, I began screaming. My anger and sadness was so loud, my coworker came running out of the building. He called Gail Lane, then gave me a hug. Miss Lane pulled in a little bit later, and I had called my mom and said, "Darsey is gone," then handed my phone to the officer. While he was on the phone, my third mother, Gail Lane, pulled into work to comfort me. She told me she was going to drive me home because she didn't want me to drive myself. I got my phone from the officer and called my wife. Told her I'd be home shortly, then got in Lane's truck and we headed for my house. She called her son Stephen, who is like a brother to me. He told me he was sorry about Darsey, and I almost don't even remember the drive to my house, but I know when I got there, my wife was already waiting for me. She followed me into the house. I immediately walked into Darsey's room against my wife's suggestions. I sat on his floor and cried for a while. After a bit, I wiped my eyes and told myself, I can't be wasting time right now. I have to start calling people to let them know what happened. One by one, I started calling people. After I finished some calls, I went back to his room where I found a notebook with my name on the front. He had written 3 phrases and drawn the symbol that we both have on our left hand middle finger. The phrases were, "Light always wins," "I'm not gone, just not here," and "Energy is never lost." I opened the notebook and found 3 letters to my family and 2 letters to his close friends. And 2 letters written to everybody. I sent pictures of the letters to my mom and dad. I called Devin and Kyle and told them to come read their letters. I then began reading the letter Darsey wrote me. He told me many things, some of which I struggle with. He said, "You are smart, smarter than the majority." Which is hard for me because I fight with depression and anxiety every day, and a side effect of that fight is memory problems. I need to be reminded often, and even then I still forget tons, and it makes me feel stupid. He also told me, "You are strong," which the fact that I'm still here after the worst day of my life is proof he was at least a little bit right. See, like many others, I fight to even get out of bed most days. But I keep doing it because I have a wife, kids, siblings, parents, and friends who need me. People will tell you that it is not okay to live for somebody else, but those people are wrong. When every day is a war with your own mind, any reason to keep fighting is a good reason. Oftentimes when you deal with depression, you wish you didn't have to wake up again. But for those around you, I think you should. See, suicide is more painful than you could ever imagine. It's cliche, but suicide doesn't get rid of your pain. It makes those you love deal with your pain and theirs. I then called Devin and told him to come read his letter. My wife handed me the paper from the front of his notebook that said my name. My brother had written, "My body is in my car, parked by the pond where we go shooting all the time. You know the one. Be ready. I'm sorry." It took less than a second for me to realize he meant our spot by Aspen Lake. I called Devin and told him I was going to go visit him. I drove to work to get my car from there. Me and Devin met at Circle K and made the same drive my brother did for the last one of his life, just 12 hours before us. After some time spent with Darsey, Devin, my wife, and Andrew, we all split ways. I went home to play Xbox with friends and spend time with my wife. Me and Darsey had a lot of the same friends on Xbox, but we've all been playing together for years. Now they are some of my closest friends in the world. If it wasn't for them and my wife, I know I wouldn't be here today. See, for me, every day is a fight. But even in Darsey's passing, he helped me out. Thanks to my mental health problems, I contemplate suicide. But it's not a choice for me now. I can't hurt other people the way he hurt me and everybody else in his life. I share bonds and pain with people now who I had never met before that day. The ripple effect suicide leaves in its wake is better compared to a tsunami. With depression, your head will convince you that the world and your friends and family will be better off without you, but that's not true. It's an outright lie. Your family needs you, your friends want you, and the world is better with you here. Whether you have a mental health problem or you've just had a bad day, I can promise you, I want you here. Your family wants you here, and so do your friends. Every day you wake up can be a good day. You wake up to millions of choices. I urge you to make them good. You can be anything you want, so make the choices to get there. If you aren't happy, make yourself happy. Find whatever it is that sets your soul on fire and chase that. Pursue it until you are happy, and then help others be happy.